Who are some of the top second round sleepers? Find out coming up on Locked On NBA Big Board. What's up? My name is Richard Stayman. You might know me better as at MavsDraft on Twitter. I do NBA Draft scouting reports at the quality of NBA level. I love scouting the draft, love the second round prospects, and that's why I wanted to talk prospects today. Really appreciate you making Locked On NBA Big Board the first listen of your day, whether it's on Monday when this comes out a little bit later in the day or Tuesday. Really appreciate you always listening. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So there are a lot of second round picks this year that I personally, like I went on Tankathon, saw how some of these guys were mocked as, looked at the boards and said, that's weird. I have some of these guys with a first round pick, such as like Jalen Bridges. I'll get to him in a bit, but there are a lot of these guys where if you look at the advanced stats, they check out. One of my favorites is Cam Spencer. He's who I wanted to lead off with on this. He's somebody very unsuspecting of what you would expect a first round pick to be. He didn't really stand out physically. He's not a great athlete. He's 6'3" without shoes, 6'5", wingspan, like 202 pounds, and not exactly physically imposing, but he has an elite skill as a shooter. And it's not just that he has the elite skill as the shooter. He is a high level shooter. Like, it is more than that too. He's very limited in making mistakes. He has one of the highest box plus minuses in the in the country. And box plus minus is a very key indicator for success. Like, just for reference, these are the top 10. Zach Edey, Donovan Clingan, John I. Broome, who's returning, and Folly Dante, Jamal Shedd, Deron Holmes, Devin Carter, Cam Spencer, Reed Shepherd, and Terrence Shannon. Now, obviously, Terrence Shannon has some stuff around him, and Broome returned. But all those other guys have very high draft status. I mean, Devin Carter's a top 10 prospect. Reed Shepherd's a top 5 prospect. Edey's probably lottery. Clingan's top 10. It's not a coincidence. It's a good indicator of how successful they were in college and probably will be again. One of the things I really like about Cam Spencer, just to kind of give a little breakdown on him, is his ability to just take care of the ball and be smart on top of having an elite skill. Like, a smart, high-level shooter is super valuable. We've seen it all the time. Duncan Robinson's a great example of it. He's somebody that knows how to use his shooting as a weapon to make others better, that he knows, all right, they're collapsing on me. I know what the next move is. Cam Spencer is in that same way. Desmond Bane. You can pretty much put a lot of different shooters. Aaron Nesmith has grown into that. He has a really good floater. I really like the offensive upside there. I think he's somebody that, if you're drafting in the 40s, you need more spacing around you and just find a shooter off the bench for very cheap. Why not Cam Spencer? I know he's not that athletic. He knows how to play defense, has physical shortcomings. He's somebody you have to put in the right lineup to minimize, because his body, he doesn't look like an NBA player in terms of he's 6'3" with a 6'5" wingspan, only 200 pounds. He's not physically imposing in the slightest. So that's a little bit of an issue. But when you have a high feel for the game, you have a secondary way to score outside of your shot with that floater, you have the elite jump shot, and you know how to make everyone else around you better. I just have a hard time seeing him not end up getting drafted. And you don't see him on mocks that much. Just looking at Tankathon right now, I don't think he's on here unless I just have terrible eyes. But I don't see him on here. So by that, to me, is somebody that he should go second round. When I was at the Combine, I heard a lot of good things. I think he does end up going second round. He played in the scrimmages, didn't have like a super standout game, didn't, controlled the game with his shooting, but he does have that shooting ability that he already played in the NBA tempo in an NBA environment where he is next to 4 other NBA quality players, and he fit as that 5th option. If you can be that 5th option in that role, why would it not translate up? At any time, he'll be the 5th best player on the floor. Pretty rare he won't be. Like, if he's a 4th, that's a big win. I just feel like someone like him, how does that not translate up? And that's my whole, pretty much that's why I'd like Cam Spencer. If you can get somebody with that elite skill, again, I've said it 3 other times, elite skill, high feel, and he can fill into a low usage role. We talk about scaling up all the time. Oh, how does his game scale up from a low role? How does it scale down? And Cam Spencer, you don't have to worry about him scaling down. He just has to go 1 for 1. It really doesn't. Nothing has to change for him. He doesn't need to put the ball on the floor. He doesn't need to be a lights out defender. You can hide him. And now that, of course, gets tricky because he is a 2. He's not a 1. So you have to have a good point guard who can play defense. So if you put him in like Boston, for example, who they have a pick at 54, he would be an outstanding pick. We've seen how Peyton Pritchard has succeeded there. Obviously not at all the same player, but where he's a little bit smaller, but he still works. They're not a defensive liability when he's on the floor. I think that stuff matters. Another guy I really like, Efton Almana. Rafael showed me how to say his name and with a native tongue sounding, and it's much better. Efton Almana was the most decorated player coming out into the draft this year, won FIBA MVPs, was very successful in FIBA and overseas internationally. He's the MVP of the 17, 18, and 19 tournaments. He was at OTE before the G League Ignite this year, and it went poorly in the G League. Like, there's no way to really mask it. Just under 10 points per game, 7 rebounds, 1.5 assists, 1 turnover per game, a half steal, just over a half steal, over a half steal block, half a block, 55% shooting. The free throw percentage was really bad, 54% from the line, 20% from 3. That didn't look good, but he's a very good athlete, gets off the ground pretty easily. He has strong hands. He wins rebounds. He has a good spin move. Ideally, I still torn on his defense. I've seen flashes of good and bad on defense. I think he still needs to learn how to play it. He generally had a good assist to turnover ratio. Like, he sees the floor, especially when you go back to Europe. You can tell he knows how to play the game and he sees the floor well, but he has to get better at actually utilizing that skill, because when he was in the short roll, almost every time it was a floater when the corner was wide open. And I get it. The Ignite didn't shoot well from 3. You probably at times wanted to get a little selfish, even though it's not Almanza's game. I just feel like if he gets that figured out, that's right now his biggest hole is the vision. And sure, he needs to shoot, but that's not as dire of a need. Like, he's athletic enough to play the 4, sometimes the 5 on offense. He has a good post game. He kind of forces that a bit much. The swing skills I wrote for my scouting report, just reading it off here without sounding robotic, is a lot of times he gets too easily excited to use his push shot. Kind of like I was saying, out of the pick and roll, that's when it happens. He gets a little tunnel vision and everything like that. He can make proper reads with room in the roll, but can he do it more accurately and more quickly? That's what it comes down to, is how quick can he make decisions and the right decisions. Then also, he gets a lot of post-ups. His entire game was post-oriented for the most part. That's not going to be the way it is in the NBA. That was a developmental thing and him being young, and that was his strength. But he has to step away from the post because that's just not as much of a weapon, especially for someone of his caliber. That's reserved for the top post guys. He's going to have to learn how to not be a post player. And I think ultimately, like, he's a winner. Why doubt it? So for me, I still buy into that. Also, he uses the same few moves. He has a very simple bag at the moment. It's pretty good. That's just eventually, I feel like with an NBA scouting report, they're going to study that and go, well, just make him do this, make him do that, and it'll be a lot better. The last thing I have is a swing skill. He has probably the most swing skills of any player, which is why he's a second-round pick, but also why he was preseason consensus top 10, is how does he tinker his shot? Like, what is it? It was a little bit tough for me to see at the combine when I saw him shoot for the first time in person. The elbow is not exactly fluid. He also needs to add a ton of weight. I think that might help him there. But his case is just a little bit difficult with that. And I have a hard time with Almanza because I don't know how much his shot is going to translate and how much it actually hurts him. But I want to talk about some of the other guys coming up: Anton Watson, Dillon Jones, the European Armel Traore, and more. But first, let me tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for small businesses, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. It gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all of that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. I've been on the opposite side of LinkedIn business. LinkedIn Jobs, for my own, looking for jobs, and it's outstanding. Personally, I recommend this highly. But go ahead and post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. So back here, my name is Richard Stayman. You probably know me better as @MavsDraft on Twitter. Let's talk about some more of these second-round picks. Anton Watson is one of my absolute favorites. He is somebody who I don't see mocked or even ranked that high. I haven't seen him really on any mock drafts in the second round, and it's kind of confusing. I get it. He was a fifth-year senior at Gonzaga. Fine. I hear that. But if you were to paint a picture of somebody who is supposed to get better every single year and actually executes it, but isn't quite at that point yet, is Anton Watson not the kind of poster boy for this? I'm going to read just some of the year-over-year breakthroughs. He went from, and every single year this number improved. Points per game, 4.9 to 6.9, a little bit over 7, so kind of stagnated going to junior year. But then he came a starter, went up to 11, and then this last year, 14.5 points per game. Every single stat across the board got better every single year. Rebounds, same thing. Assists was very close. It went down 0.3 as a sophomore, so technically it doesn't qualify. Steals was the same thing. Blocks was pretty much the same thing outside of 1 year. The turnovers slightly went up, I guess it counts, but not necessarily the way you want. But it's still such a low number. He never even got 1.5 turnovers per game. And just for reference, the totals, he had 299 assists to 170 turnovers. As a forward, that's pretty impressive. That's the entire career. I really like his game. He's somebody that I fall in love with as this connective guy that you can find in undrafted free agency. He's very versatile. He creates chaos on the defensive end. He's one of the smartest players in the draft, probably off the court too. That wouldn't shock me. The motor is nonstop. He has a weapon to score out of the pick and roll with a nice push shot if he's not winning with his size, because he's not overly big. He's 6'9" with 6'8" with a 7-foot wingspan, kind of big hands. He has really good balance. Like, that's one of the things I've noticed when he is going against switches. He's hard to shake. He's really tough to shake because he knows how to stay exactly where he needs to be, and he has that body control. Like, body control is one of the biggest things for defense. Really like that from him. He also reads passes and just reads plays before they happen. That's another thing I'm just a massive sucker for. That's just number one telltale that you have a defensive feel for the game for me, is if you're able to understand, okay, well, the ball handler just did this. I'm here. They want this. This is what's going to happen. I buy that fully. So he has a great defensive feel. Also has quick hands, forces, like I said, the steals went up every single year just about. And he has soft touch at the rim. He has really good finishing numbers. I really like that. I think that's something where he doesn't need to be athletic to finish over guys, and I think that's how he wins. And he's not that athletic, speaking of. He doesn't get great lifts, and I think that actually hurts him more. I know, like, as a finisher, you'd think the athleticism kind of limits him, but to me, it really gets it to be he can't contest super well. And it's not the biggest thing. If I'd argue staying in front of a guy is more important than getting the hand up at the end, because most guys can eventually get a reach, and sometimes it doesn't even matter. But I'm okay if he's able to stay in front and not able to get a contest, whereas if he could get a very late contest at the right spot but not be there because he lost his feet, I'd rather have the former, how Anton Watson is. The big skill for him is just how will that athleticism translate up. I'm more worried about that than the jump shot, which is the other thing. The free throw percentage wasn't that great throughout college. It peaked this year at 65%, or actually, excuse me, it was as a junior, 69.8. But then last year, more volume, it went down to 55, and then it went to 65. But this year, he started taking more threes. Actually, last year, he took 1 attempt per game, 33%. Not bad. This year went up to 41% on 1.5. So it's still low sample size, but it is an improvement nonetheless. However much you want to take away from that, of course, it depends. He probably could play the 5. I think he could eventually get there in the NBA. Are you happy with it? He's not the ideal 5, but it's really not that bad of a scenario personally. And I think that's why, for me, I really like the idea of him being that second round steal this year. And personally, if I was able to consult for NBA teams, I would tell them right now, take this dude in the last 10 picks. Like, why not? Who are you getting that's going to be able to play this exact role as this connective 4-5? There isn't another one of these in the draft at any point, really, after the first round, but like, let alone in the second half of the second round. I feel like that's an obvious one that he should be there. Again, Anton Watson's probably my draft darling this year. I'm not going to say I had a perfect record with a lot of these guys, but I feel like on a lot of these I do hit. And Anton Watson would be that guy where I think he'll play into a two-way. Could be what Jeremiah Robinson Earl, for example, was supposed to be before he got injured and really hurt himself. So I want to also talk about Dillon Jones, Armel Traore, and then some other guys that pop up in my head and everything as I keep talking. But first, let me tell you about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. That's the formula for winning championships, and it's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Last segment here. Let's talk about some other guys. I think Dillon Jones is probably one of the best second-round sleepers. He is far and away the most unique prospect in this draft. He's 6'6". That's what he's on Basketball Reference. Let's see what he measured at. He measured at 6'4.5" without shoes. 6'11" wingspan, so very long arms. Also at 236, so he's strong. He's pretty big. He's a bulky dude. He doesn't get off the ground, though. Like, his athleticism is limited. But like that is a very awkward formula. I'm just going to read some of his stats. He doesn't block shots, which is he peaked at 0.1 per game, block per game. In college total, he had 8 blocks over 119 games in 4 years. So not good on that department. But you look everywhere else, and there's nothing wrong at this point. There's no red flags. 20.8 points per game, 10 rebounds, 3 straight years he hit 10. Technically this year, 9.8, but I'm going to round up. 5 assists this year, 2 steals per game, 49% shooting, 32% from the three. The three-point shot has been a little off, but I've talked about this before. Free throw percentage is a bigger indicator than three-point percentage, especially when he's taking it on volume. So that's a good thing to see. He shot 80% junior or sophomore year, 81% junior year, 79% even freshman, actually, to skip that a little. And then back to this year, 86% from the line on 7 attempts per game. So the shooting touch is clearly there by the shot coming around. Defense, I don't know how it'll translate up from the Big Sky. Took me a second to remember that mid-major conference. I'm usually on point with those. But it might take him a second to translate up. I mean, even at the combine scrimmages this year, I was a little bit skeptical of him. He didn't look so great. He really struggled to play as the last option, whereas he was a guy who usually I feel like these first options that do everything, they scale down pretty well. A common example I always give is Robert Covington, right? He obviously is known for being that 3-and-D player, but he did everything in college. And I think that's something that a lot of people forgot about. He averaged a little over assist and a half. He was a rebounder. He was a shot creator at times. Like, it wasn't necessarily great, but he was a shot creator. So Dillon Jones is really interesting. I think he is going to either be somehow in the first round or he's going to be one of the first picks in the second round. And because of that, I feel like he belongs on this list, and I really like him. Another guy I really like is Armel Traore. He is somebody you probably haven't heard of yet, but you're going to hear about him. He has been in the international. He's going to be in the international combine that's coming up. He's auto eligible for this draft. He just turned 21, so he's pretty young for this draft. Really good feel for the game. He plays in the same league as Tijan Salaun. Actually, in the one game I saw against him early in the season, he dominated him. Obviously, 3 years apart, but or 2.5, something like that. Like, it's a few years apart. But the athleticism, the way he dominated, he is an outstanding finisher. He's going to finish very well. The jump shot has potential. The free throw numbers are a little bit less than you'd like to see right now. The season's still going on, but right now he is at 65%. At one point he was in the 70s, the mid 70s throughout the year. So it's kind of fallen off, but he knows how to play off the ball. Ridiculously good motor. I really like his game. And I feel like he's somebody that when you look at these European players with size, the athleticism comes around. That translates, especially the athletic guys who come from overseas. As they add more skill, they're very successful. I think he might be one of the biggest sleepers actually in this entire draft. I currently have him in my, let's look, in the 50s, I think, maybe number 49. Yeah, number 49. I really like him. He's somebody that, again, I just feel like he's probably going to be a draft and stash, but he might have some really strong dividends down the road. Another guy I like, I'll go to another big because I feel like I haven't talked about many of those yet, is Adem Bona. He's a true center. None of the other guys I've listed with Anton Watson and Efton Almana are true centers. Adem Bona is. And I actually really like him. He has really good foot speed. He can block shots. He plays good defense. Now, caveat, he fouls a lot. He fouled out in this combine scrimmage one of the days. He sets really good screens. He's dynamic. He's primarily a dynamic pick and roll threat. On defense, he can defend the pick and roll pretty well. He's a really unique drop coverage defender. I really liked what I saw from him there. In the NBA, he'll probably do the same thing, but you're comfortable with him switching. He's developed more moves this year. He's also developed more playing out of the paint. Like he's had a few ISOs where he starts above the free throw line and he's coming in. Now, some concerns with him. Those are all nice selling points. There's a reason he's in the second round, though. One, he doesn't shoot. That's a big thing. Two, like I said, foul trouble is pretty common with him. Also, he has bad hands. Like there were a lot of times where he just fumbled easy catches. He doesn't have to prove that maybe my sample size that I happen to see just every game it was that it was just those games and it was complete coincidence. The other thing I would say is he forces a lot of shots at the rim. A lot of bigs kind of do that in college. Not super alarming, but you'd like to see a little bit less of that in the NBA when he's only taking 3 shots a game tops for early in his career as a low usage big. And then also just the turnovers, which again, that plus the fouls, that kind of gives you a little bit of a red flag of going, is he somebody like he may have too many things to fix to really overcome? And then the last one I would say, I got one more I'll do. And also in the comments, feel free. I will reply back and everything. I check the comments. Tell me who you like in the second round that I may have missed or didn't talk about, or if they're first round pick, I'll just tell you they're a first round pick and that's why they weren't in here. But there are so many guys, obviously just now this year, 28 second round picks, and just for clarifications, 2 teams forfeited their pick because of tampering. There's a lot of quality talent. I will say this before I go into the last guy. For me, I have about 70 draftable, a little bit less than 70 draftable guys. And because of that, there's more than 58. You're going to find somebody very good in undrafted free agency. And I lied. I'll actually do 2. I'll kind of shortcut into the second one. The first one is Jonathan Mogbo. If you aren't familiar with him, I was out on him pretty early, but the more research I do, I just feel like he's somebody that's going to look a little bit better in the NBA than at San Francisco. Another one of these guys, he's one of the other 10 players that was in the 10 plus box plus minus. So really good advanced stats. Just he might have the best advanced stats profile of any non-first round pick. 3 block, 3 steal percentage, finishes very well at the rim, and overall from 2, very good rebounder. Like he does a lot. Now, all that is good. The reason he is a second round pick is because he does not shoot. He is not a shooter in the slightest, but the form actually isn't bad. When I saw him at the combine warming up, it took me a second to realize, I was like, wait, is this really Jonathan Mogbo? Because he looks pretty comfortable shooting. And for those who don't know, he came from 2 community colleges before going to D1. He's been at 4 schools in 4 years, 2 different community colleges, Missouri State, where he shot 43% from the line and 3 attempts per game. Then same volume at San Francisco, he went up to 69%. He only took 2 threes this year, so not much to go off of there, but the form looks good. And I think if teams buy into him being a shooter, he might actually go in the first round. Like, I don't think that's even that much of a stretch. I do think he has to improve things such as, like, beyond the shooting, he doesn't really separate that well on drives, despite being athletic. That has always thrown me off. And he doesn't produce a ton on defense. I thought he kind of could have dominated more on the defensive end, but didn't have great stats, 1.5 steal, 0.8 blocks. And, San Francisco isn't playing a powerhouse schedule. They don't play the out of conference schedule like Gonzaga plays, even though they're in the same conference. But the West Coast Conference isn't bad. It's just he should have done a little bit better in that regard. The last guy I was going to talk about, though, and Mogbo, just to close that out, actually, if he does go top 45, he might be in the top 30. He's probably the best candidate of every player I've listed so far. I would say Mogbo is probably the best candidate to go in the first round of all these players. All right, so the last one, I'm from Dallas, for those who don't know, MavsDraft. If you haven't picked up on that, I'm in Dallas for the moment. You might see the empty shelves behind me. I'm moving from Dallas. Irrelevant. I've been to TCU and credentialed there for the last 6 years. So, of course, I'm going to talk about a TCU guy. I loved Desmond Bane coming out of the draft. I had him 2 years before he was even on draft radars as a draftable player. One of my, if not my very most, like the proudest scout I've had. Emanuel Miller is really good, though. I have him as a draftable grade out of TCU. And it's interesting. He's the brother of Leonard Miller. You don't really hear anything about him because I guess Leonard didn't do much as a rookie, which was expected. He's the older brother. Every single year, he's another guy that got better at TCU. He was at Texas A&M until his sophomore year, transferred to TCU, took a little bit more of a backseat, played less minutes, lower usage. But his whole thing, everybody kept saying was like, okay, if he improves his shot, he could be a lot better. And if he's comfortable being a better decision maker. And everything that he was supposed to do this year was that. A lot of times, I know even David Locke, we've talked about this before doing the draft show, which, by the way, it's coming up soon. Little subtle ad. If on those, a lot of David's questions are, well, is he really improved or is he just older than everybody? Because Emanuel Miller is 23 and it's a valid question. But I actually think Emanuel Miller is going to be the exception to that rule. He measured with long arms, 6'6", with a 6'9" wingspan. It's not overly long, but it's at least sufficient. He improved his playmaking. The free throw percentage, I love this. It jumped from 68% as a junior to 65% as a fourth-year senior, and then this year is his fifth year at 81.5%. And this isn't the only time, though, that it's been high. As a sophomore at A&M on the same volume, 5.5 per game, attempts per game, he shot 82%. So to me, I know this because I know people with TCU, and I've heard this before, is that he improved his shot because of work ethic. And work ethic is going to get you in the league and is going to let you stay in the league. Because of that, I just really like Emanuel Miller. I think he's somebody that sticks. I think the shot, he's a great athlete, can play defense, can make quick reads on the perimeter when he catches the ball in transition, find the next player, find the open hole in the defense, all of that. On the wings, you need that kind of player, the athletic guy who can play defense, who can really make plays happen. I think that's super important in today's NBA. Let him come off the bench. He can play that complementary role. I really like his game. Well, those are some of the second-round sleepers. I talked about Cam Spencer, Efton Almana, Anton Watson, Dillon Jones, Armel Traore, Jonathan Mogbo, and Emanuel Miller. Leave some comments below telling me what you think, one, you want to hear in the future. We love hearing the guest ideas and everything and audience ideas. We really appreciate everybody. But also tell me some names I may have missed in the second round. I'm really excited to see your feedback. Appreciate everybody who continues to listen. And again, I will be back. Maybe James will be with me. Maybe Leif. Actually, Leif's in Europe. But we'll be back for the rest of the week a little bit more on time. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your day.